Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zach Ruink, the Chief Operating Officer here at the League. I want to thank you all for joining us for this edition of the League's monthly series, the Food for Thought series. Um, we are recording the webinar, so you'll have an archived version of it. They do live on the League's website under the Food for Thought series, which will take you to a link at YouTube. Today's topic is one that's on the minds of nearly everyone associated with local governments these days. Communities are grappling with not enough housing or looking to rehab existing housing. There's tremendous amount of pressure on the market and from a lot of perspectives. And we're pleased to share the presenters and the panelists that we've got lined up with you today. But before I do, I want to call out a few league programs we've got coming up. We have a series of regional roundtables that we're holding around the state to convene municipal leaders for an evening of training, a league and legislative updates, and an opportunity to connect with one another in the ever popular roundtable format. So check the league's website for that. We also have the League Spring Conference taking place in April, and registration is now open for that event. So we hope to see you at one of these events. They're a great way to get connected with each other, learn from one another, and connect with league staff. Andrea's got a poll for us today to kick us off. Andrea, if you could launch the first poll here. We're getting a little bit of reprieve from the cold weather lately, but poll today is, what's your go-to food during cold weather? I think it's National Chili Day, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll go ahead and have you fill out that poll. And we'll close it in 3, 2, 1. All right, looks like Comfort in a Bowl is the winner there. Close second, chili casseroles there too. Not too many folks are looking for ice cream on a cold day. I tend to be one that enjoys ice cream even on cold days, but I'm with you. I like a little super stew myself. Well, thanks again for joining us today. We've got 3 folks joining us to talk about housing and various approaches that they're taking and looking to solve and elevate the opportunities facing all of us as it relates to housing. You've got a familiar face in Kurt Watinsky, who served as the League's deputy director most recently, but had a 35-year career with the League. And Kurt's remained engaged, and that's probably putting it mildly. Kurt, you've actively worked in partnership with a couple of other organizations, and I'll have you talk about the initiative momentarily. But we're pleased to bring the program to you all. We acknowledge that addressing some of the housing needs and challenges in your communities is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it does take a comprehensive perspective and amount of energy to address the needs that you're all facing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kurt Watinsky, who is consulting with the More Housing Wisconsin initiative that the League is proud to be part of. Kurt, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Appreciate that introduction. And let me just, I'm excited to tell you about a project I've been working on the last 12 months, and it's called More Housing Wisconsin. But before I do, just let me tell you how we're going to proceed over the next 45 minutes or so. So I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, give an overview of More Housing Wisconsin. Then I'm going to turn it over to 2 people who are going to talk about an example housing project that a municipality is working with a nonprofit organization, in this case, Habitat for Humanity out of La Crosse, to put together a housing development for, and I'm going to call it affordable workforce. They might have other language they want to use, but nevertheless, it's putting 10 houses together where there haven't been any new homes for people to move into in Hillsborough. And so we're going to hear about this Hillsborough housing project from Kaya Fox, who I'll introduce again at the end of my talk. She's the executive director of the La Crosse Regional Habitat for Humanity. And then Josh Finch is the city administrator for Hillsborough. We're going to hear from those 2 people who are most responsible for putting together this project that we're going to hear more about. But before I talk about More Housing Wisconsin, Andrew, if you could bring up the first of those 2 polls, we're going to get people kind of thinking a little bit about some of the topics we'll touch on over the course of the next 45 minutes. So the first poll here is, has your community updated the housing element of its comprehensive plan within the last 5 years? And we'll give you a few moments to look at the options there. I like some of the answers that I don't take credit for putting some of these answers that were made available, but Andrea that did a good job with that. Okay, well, we'll close the poll here in three, uh, two, one. Oh, good. Looks like over a majority anyway of communities have updated the housing element of the comprehensive plan, which is only one of nine elements, but it's as many of you know, it's important, taking on a little bit more importance here because that's one of the eligibility requirements for a community being in the best position possible to be eligible for these new these new low interest loans for workforce and senior housing projects does necessitate that the municipality has updated the housing element of its comprehensive plan within the last 5 years. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, you might want to talk to your staff and start thinking about accomplishing that, as soon as possible. All right, Andrew, could you bring up the second poll? Thank you. Okay, the second poll is, has your community made any changes to its zoning code recently to allow for more housing options and density? Have you made any updates to your zoning code that might make it easier to for private sector to create more housing in your community? So we'll give you a few seconds to respond. Okay, Andrew, we can close that in three, two, one. Okay, that's actually almost a third of you of those participating today, and I suppose most of the communities and staff and elected officials who are on this lunch and learn today are interested in housing. So you may have been more active in this area than some of the other communities around the state. But it's good to see that 30% of you have made some changes to your zoning code, or at least, and many more are thinking about it, planning and working on it. All right. So with that, let me just share with you a few slides I wanted to go over in my talk with. Let's see here. Is that coming up, folks? Can you see that, Kai and Josh? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so let me tell you about More Housing Wisconsin. It's something I've been working on the last 12 months, and it came together at the end of 2023. And it's a cooperative effort by three organizations that are listed on this screen: the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Builders Association. And these three organizations shared a deep concern about the housing shortage that our state is experiencing and the associated housing affordability crisis, and wanted to do something jointly, or together, and trying to address that. These three organizations also had a desire to help communities be in the best position possible to qualify for those new low interest loans that the state of Wisconsin created for workforce and senior housing projects, and that the state of Wisconsin has funded as at a significant amount of money. So many of you are familiar with this program, and it does, as I mentioned, it does take some work by municipalities to enable developers to be able to tap into those loans. Municipalities have to meet certain eligibility requirements, which relate to making some zoning changes to enable housing developments to occur at a reduced cost than they would have ordinarily under your existing zoning code and under your existing, say, development fee schedule. Um, the so the goal of More Housing Wisconsin is to educate and inform municipal leaders about zoning changes and other strategies, other tactics that communities can use to help address the housing shortage by reducing local regulatory barriers to the private sector generating more housing in your communities, and B, helping communities qualify for these new low interest loans available for workforce and senior housing projects through WIDA. The primary way in which we are sharing information and best practices and tools and resources related to housing is through the publication of papers. We published 12 papers. The last one we published was just this month. We started a year ago. And each of these papers dives down into eh, best practices in a little more detail about one specific strategy a community can employ or implement to help bring about more housing, or hopefully help bring about more housing in their communities. If you were to look at the list of 12, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but you would find that many of them do focus on zoning. And the reason for that is that if you were to read reports and analysis and examinations and the literature on why the nation and the state of Wisconsin is experiencing a housing shortage right now, there are many reasons why, and they all, each report kind of points to the same set of reasons. But one of them, one factor that's consistently mentioned is not the primary reason, but as a factor in contributing to the housing shortage are outdated zoning regulations. So More Housing Wisconsin has decided to focus on that primarily, not exclusively. And also, it's just this is really the only cause for the housing shortage that municipalities have any control over, can actually have an impact on. And so many of our papers deal with topics such as this. I'm just going to list a couple of the titles of a couple of the papers. So, reducing minimum lot and dwelling unit size restrictions to allow for more density. Supporting infill housing by enabling missing middle. These are, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, smaller apartment buildings in and accessory dwelling units in existing residential districts. Another topic along these lines are streamlining the standard development approval process and creating an expedited review for workforce housing. So these are some examples of some of the strategies that our papers focus on. Now, zoning isn't the exclusive topic of the some of the papers, and I encourage you to take a look at some of these. So other topics we talk about are neutralizing NIMBYism and building public support for workforce housing, as you can see on this screen. Another topic is using the TID Affordable Housing Extension to fund municipal housing initiatives, which was published or will be published, I think, maybe in the upcoming March issue of the Municipality magazine. So we do try to tie in and look at what are some ways that municipalities can help fund some of their housing initiatives. And of course, the number one option in Wisconsin, at least, is the TIF Affordable Housing Extension. Another topic, the last paper that we wrote, we just published and became available at the beginning of this month, is what local governments must do to participate in the workforce and senior housing low interest loan programs that the state recently created and we talked about already. And we want to make sure municipalities and developers who want to work in municipalities are able to make use of that significant amount of money that the state has set aside for those purposes. Now, in addition to the papers, I also was able over the last year to interview 12 really interesting, informative, and fun individuals about housing issues and housing strategies. Some of them were academic folks, some were what you'd call housing policy experts. A few were represented the either the nonprofit or for-profit housing development world, and all who told us about some best practices that would make their lives a little easier. But the majority of my interviews were with local staff, local officials who've had some experience implementing some of the strategies we talk about in our papers. And we hear some of the lessons they learned and want to share with us. And I came away from these interviews learning a lot. And I think maybe you might come away with a few nuggets too. So I encourage you to maybe listen in. Most of these are from I don't know, in the 15-minute range, no more than 20 minutes, and some are, 12 minutes. And there's some examples on this screen here, some of the folks we talked to. So all of this material, both the papers and the interviews, the recorded interviews, are available on the three organizations that created More Housing Wisconsin. Each organization set aside a page on their website devoted to More Housing Wisconsin, and anyone can access that material. It's complimentary, it's free, it's open to the public as well as members of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and the three organizations that brought this about. I encourage you to take a look at this if you haven't already, and make use of some of these resources, and even share it with others who might be on your village board or staff that you work with at the municipal level. Okay, before I move on, Andrew, are there any questions that may have came in that I'm ignoring or haven't seen?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay, great. All right, so I want to shift gears here a little bit and talk about, um, excuse me, let's see. I want to talk about a specific example that we highlighted in one of our papers. The December 2024 paper was on the topic of using publicly owned land and partnering with nonprofits to create more housing. We give several examples in that paper of Wisconsin municipalities who have done exactly this. And one of those examples was out of the city of Hillsborough, where Hillsborough uh, has contracted with Habitat for Humanity out of La Crosse to build 10 affordable single-family homes in a subdivision owned by the city. And as I mentioned earlier, joining us today to talk about that project in more detail and tell us how it came together and maybe how it's going today are Kaya Fox, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of the Greater La Crosse region, and Josh Finch, who's the Hillsborough City Administrator. So I'm going to turn it over to those folks right now. We're going to hear a little bit more about that particular project.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So my name is Josh Finch. I'm the city administrator for Hillsborough, Wisconsin. And with me today is Kaya Fox, Habitat for Humanity of the Greater La Crosse region, executive director. I have been in my role for about 4 years now. And during my tenure so far, we have come to realize that affordable housing isn't a negative thing, right? Affordable housing is such a needed thing, and the levels of affordable housing are quite vast. So I will kind of have Kaya look into or explain a little bit more. Um, well, you can take it over, Kaya.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff. So my name's Kai. I'm the executive director here at Habitat. We are a Habitat for Humanity affiliate. We serve 4 counties in the state of Wisconsin, including Vernon County, where Hillsborough is situated, and also Houston County in Minnesota. And so what I want to talk about is a little bit more about like housing as Habitat sees it as part of our mission. And then I'm going to turn it over to Josh to talk more specifically about housing drilled down into the city. And then the both of us are going to talk a little bit about how we partnered to create a solution to those issues that we both kind of see as part of our mission in very vastly different roles that we play in the work that we do. So I've been with Habitat for almost 10 years now, but Habitat for Humanity is an international organization that we are focused on providing safe and affordable housing to people in our communities. And I think we have all seen graphs like this over the last little bit. But I really want to drive it home. So I think it's really important for us to see the idea that the problem that we're all facing is based on numbers, right? There's reality behind it, and why we are our constituents and our communities are talking about affordable housing is because it's truly an issue. And so, we can see that graph of the rising cost of home values, and especially over the last few years, and wages that people make. They don't fit. But the biggest issue that we see is that the homes that are considered entry-level starter homes have had the greatest increase in cost over time. So people who are looking to buy their first homes, to have those starter homes, to have affordable housing, however we want to refer to it, are the ones that are being hit the hardest because the value of those homes have increased faster than any other type of home out there. And so that's why it's increasingly hard for developers, for municipalities to find those homes that we've all kind of counted on over the years to draw in your workforce, for your doctors, your nurses, your teachers, all of the people in your community that kind of make things happen. And if you take a look specifically again at affordable housing, this statistic I gave you is actually a Midwest statistic, and it applies to the state of Wisconsin. So this is really scary. For every $1,000 increase in the median new home price in your municipality in the state of Wisconsin, almost 2,000 people are basically pushed out of the market. And so, as home prices increase, it has a real impact on the people in our communities and their ability to invest in home ownership. And then again, the other one shows you, over the last few years, this drastic decrease in those starter homes, those attainable home ownership, those first-time homes for that kind of trajectory that families and people have in communities that we have we will buy homes and we will be homeowners. And so I think it's really important that we understand that this issue is an issue that's not a Vernon County issue. It's not a state of Wisconsin issue. It's a national issue. And there's real data behind it and there's real impacts. And we need to start building houses in our community. We need to start building and bringing back that gap that has been growing over the last few years. So Josh,
Yeah, no,
talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today.
yeah, no, absolutely. So a little bit of the backstory. Hillsborough is a smaller community, rural community on the corner of Vernon County and Juneau County, a population of around 1,400. About 35, 40-ish years ago, the city decided to become a developer of a subdivision. And with that, they created a TID, one of the first TIDs within the community, with a focus on housing. That was a really a key point for them. And over the course of the next 25 or 30 years, they had a significant amount of growth. But unfortunately, the subdivision that they had created was not able to be completely filled. We would see one or two houses being built every year or so. There was an actual a burst of development leading up to the pandemic, where there was a stretch of about 8 or 9 houses in the course of 3 or 4 years, which for us is quite a large deal, especially when it comes to that net new construction. But unfortunately, since 2020 and the pandemic, and just the cost of everything, it slowed drastically to the point where I think there's been one house that has been constructed in that subdivision, as well as actually, I think within the entire community since 2020. So it is obvious that's very harmful when you're talking a lot of things for just the housing aspect, the construction, net new construction aspect. So recognizing the need, because it's a significant need with some of our key players with Gunderson, St. Joe's now Amplify Health, Land O'Lakes, or Nua Specialties. We have a lot of industries that require the staffing and the housing. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of people that have had to turn jobs away, turn jobs down, and due to the fact that there is no housing in the area. Because again, as Kaya said, it's not just a Hillsborough thing, it's not just a Vernon County thing or a Wisconsin thing. It is a national issue. So recognizing that this was an issue, the council and I had discussions about a year and a half ago, well, actually probably about 2 years ago now. But what do we do to address it? How are ways that we can try to manage the shortfall of housing? And what ended up ensuing was about a month and a half of just discussions and meetings to try to figure out the best course of action, looking at other municipalities across the country. And we decided on submitting or releasing an RFP, a request for proposals. And we put out a request for about a month and a half, looking for a developer to come in and provide us their information, their designs, any incentives that they might require or wish to have, just so we can see what options that we had. And we're very fortunate that Habitat proposed a great proposal. And over the course of probably about 5 months after the proposal, we were able to hash things out. And in I think it was July of 24, we were able to come to terms and get an agreement signed. And due to that, we are now able to get 10 new affordable workforce housing units within the city of Hillsborough. And the great thing about this is it's actually within a new TID, a new tax increment district. And it's the former district that we had years ago When we closed that TID out, the TID number two, we had a year of it, the affordable housing extension. So what is very fortunate for us is any incentive that's going into this project is actually being able to be utilized from the affordable housing extension fund from a few years ago. So there's very limited impact on any taxpayer funds to make this project actually succeed, which is huge. And then additionally, the fact that it's going to be in a new tax district, we're going to be able to get that funding for years to come. And for us, we have a lot of significant projects from a massive state highway project, a treatment plant upgrade, a lot of significant projects that are going to be in the millions range. And while 10 houses might not seem like a lot, when you're talking anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 of added income within that TID, it really does make a difference in the long term. So you can go ahead into the next slide, please. So a little bit about the data, and this is, I think, a really important thing to note when you're looking at the census information. We technically actually lost almost 10 people from the 2010 to the 2020 census. The median household income, it increased, but not significantly. But the real indicator there was a housing unit growth, going from 662 to 675. And what's important to note with that is we actually had a 16 unit apartment complex constructed. We had 16 brand new units that were constructed during that time frame, plus several houses. And we still actually, relatively in the scheme of things, lost due to house fires, houses being condemned for other various reasons, just due to the lack of cleanliness or the dilapidated housing. So, one of the issues that we're really facing with is also the quality of houses and making sure that they are safe and utilized for every purpose. It's something where we have unfortunately a lot of houses that are older, so they're not maybe as viable as one might hope. So the other thing to note is the median house value. As you can see, it did jump up a little bit, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Obviously, the value is where it's valued at. Um, but when it comes to the actual sale price, that is a kicker. Um, I truly do not think I know of any house right now in the market within the region and within the city of Hillsborough that is going for under 200,000. And what I mean by that though is there are houses that are two bed, one bath, no garage on a quarter acre lot going, and I mean very, very unfortunately run down, going for 200, 215, 240. And you're seeing some of the three bed, one bath or three bed, two bath, single car garage going upwards for 330 to 400,000. In fact, there was a house about 8 months ago that went for almost $420,000. So obviously that's not necessarily realistic within our range because as you're looking back at that median household income, it's just not necessarily an affordable factor. Um, and as you can see, kind of in terms of other data, poverty in Wisconsin is about 10.2%, and Vernon County as a whole is more of an impoverished community at that 14.6%. And obviously, affordable housing needs are critical. And as it says, there's a need of over 123,000 units needed. Um, Regarding the household income, I'll let you talk about that a little bit more, Kaya.
Absolutely. So the household income plays a role into the overall project development that we proposed and was accepted by the city of Hillsborough. So Habitat for Humanity submitted a proposal to the city when they requested developers to step up and put something in for affordable housing. And so our proposal, based on what the city was looking for, was 10 new homes. These are single family standalone home ownership opportunities for residents in the city of Hillsborough. It is a truly mixed income development. So a lot of times when people hear Habitat for Humanity, they think Habitat for Humanity develops, lower income housing. Absolutely, that is what we do. But we also understand as a developer that mixed income communities are better communities. It's better for the constituents. And when you're a community that's the size of Hillsborough, the housing need runs the gamut across the spectrum of incomes that are out there. And so understanding that when we're putting housing on the market, we need to be looking at all of the different individuals that are having difficulty finding homes. And middle income families are increasingly finding it harder and harder and harder to afford homes in our community. So we already know low income families, it's almost impossible, but middle income are struggling as well. So the proposal was three Habitat for Humanity homes. So those traditional Habitat homes that we know of, where Habitat is the one that provides the mortgage, there's the sweat equity requirements, all of the things that go into our truly programmatic home ownership process. We also are doing three just standalone first-time homeowners at under 80% of the county median income. We'll be partnering with our local community action agency, CooleyCap, to help with the sale and the financing for these homes. But then the unique piece about this project, it also includes basically 4 market rate homes that will be sold on the open market using conventional financing for individuals at up to 120% of the area median income. So this gives you that truly mixed income feel, and it also is a way that we can offer housing for a variety of individuals in the community, but also it's a way that we cash flow this project. We are using a new type of housing called cross mods. Cross mods are factory built homes. So these are houses coming pre-constructed out of a factory and shipped to Hillsborough. They are 3 to 4 bedroom homes with 2 bathrooms. They have an attached 2-car garage, a front porch, a full basement. These are actually to a higher elevated energy standard that's called e-built, which means they're 40 to 50% more energy efficient than a standard stick-built home. And then all 10 of the units are going to have a 7 to 8 kilowatt solar panels on the roof with a battery backup in the basement. We have done pre-construction appraisals where these houses are coming at below kind of the average price that Josh talked about, but still a price point that allows for that TID to really truly turn in some taxes for the municipality. Because this is an affordable housing program, there is going to be subsidy brought in to help lower the price on the first mortgage for those under 60 and under 80 homeowners. And so the price point on these is going to be dependent on the family buying the home. And so even though you see those elevated prices, which is what we're all dealing with as housing developers, as affordable housing developers, even the idea of starter homes and affordable homes are typically not affordable to most low-income families. So subsidy comes in to help lower the actual true first mortgage price and the monthly payment that our homeowners are going to be making.
So I
Just
do
wanna
have a
go ahead.
question on the floor plan on how
Yeah.
many square feet that is.
So the average square foot on these homes are anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 square feet without the basement.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
And yeah, absolutely. And so these are just some pictures. So I understand we get a lot of people that ask questions about factory built housing. You know, this is definitely one of the unique things about this project, but is also something that can be kind of a sticking point for people. Factory built housing has really elevated over the last few years. And when I say last few, I'm talking the last 10 to 15 years. They are really getting into the market of that idea of attainable, affordable housing, workforce housing, and have really kind of moved away from those traditional kind of thoughts that we have about factory built homes. You know, it is drywall throughout. It is R50 insulation in the attic. You have 512 pitch roofs. You see, you know, from the picture we showed before, there's a lot more depth to it, you know, roof lines, garages, and porches that you will see in these homes that really truly help them blend into the neighborhood in which it is going in. So these are actual pictures of what these homes will look like standard coming out of the factory. You know, really nice sized bedrooms, really nice sized bathrooms. And then as a cross mod, they have a really enhanced construction to them that is actually even elevated above traditional factory built homes that are coming out. So again, that drywalled interior, they're put on permanent foundations. You have those roof lines that really add to that curb appeal in the neighborhood. Elevated interior materials, so all of the cabinets are hardwood cabinetry, and then you have that increased energy efficiency that when you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about residents in the state of Wisconsin is also a really great benefit to everybody. And so this is the model that we'll be using as we develop those homes. We'll be working with the Habitat families and addressing their needs in the community. Right now, we have our application rounds open for the Habitat homeowners for the city of Hillsborough, and we have been getting phone calls left and right. We actually just opened up the application process. We're looking for homeowners in La Crosse and in Hillsborough. And, we've been in the city of La Crosse for over 30 years now. We have 3 complete applications for the city of La Crosse and 3 complete applications for Hillsborough. So that can tell you, like the city of La Crosse, MSA is over 100,000 people. We've got 3 applications and 1,400 people in the city of Hillsborough, and we also have 3 applications. So that tells you, the need and the kind of the desire for people in the community to have access to this type of housing. And so again, I alluded to, that what we will do is work with the mortgage holders to make sure that we are creating a package for them that is affordable. So understanding that affordable housing development, just the cost of building the home and the appraised value of the homes is no longer enough. You cannot build small enough houses that are affordable to most low-income families. Subsidy needs to be a part of that equation. And Habitat, as a nonprofit organization, has access and can bring that subsidy to the table to create a mortgage package that is affordable for the homeowners that will be buying these homes. And so what we are doing right now is we are working really closely with the city and the community on reaching out and getting folks to apply. We have committed to the city of Hillsborough that we are hiring local contractors. So we've been reaching out and getting competitive bids from people in the community. We want to make sure that dollars are being spent, that those dollars are benefiting the communities that we're working with, not just with the housing, but with the work that's being completed. And then we'll be working in the community to get volunteers because one of the pieces of Habitat that helps us keep our costs lower is that we use volunteer labor and support from our community to build our homes. So Josh, did you have anything you wanted to make sure you added as part of kind of this process that we've been going through?
Yeah, not entirely. I think we relatively covered a majority of it, Kaya. I think the biggest thing is when it comes to addressing affordable or just housing in general, um, any effort that you're doing is better than no effort at all. And in this case, we're very, very fortunate to be able to have a partnership with Habitat. But even just having, one at a time, two at a time, whatever it might be, any effort that you're able to do is going to be a benefit in the long term.
And I think it's really important to note, like 10 houses in the city of Hillsborough, single family homes in the city of Hillsborough with a population of about 1,400, that makes an impact. That is a huge influx in a very short period of time of housing in the community that can make an impact. And so, a lot of times that we get this idea of like there's so much need for housing and it feels almost overwhelming. But like Josh was saying, a handful of houses can make an impact, and it can also be a point that helps kind of spur other types of development in your community. I did want to talk quickly about, I think Kurt was talking a little bit about NIMBYism. Those are definitely things, and we talk a little bit more about how we front face these projects in our community. So a lot of times, Josh said affordable housing sometimes feels like a bad word when it's mentioned within your communities. Some of the terms that I tried to use when talking about this was starter housing, first-time homeownership, workforce housing. Some of these over time, like we all used to use the word affordable housing, and then we started using things like workforce housing, and people are starting to get hip to that, so they hear the word workforce housing and they're like, ooh, is that affordable housing? Is that bad word? So I think you really need to make sure that you're telling the story of your community and going back to some of that data and that need and how that impact can happen. So I don't know it necessarily matters the terms that you use what works for you, use what resonates in your community, use what you actually truly need in your community, but understand that this needs to be a discussion because there is NIMBYism and there is some pushback. And, Habitat for Humanity is a well-respected, nationwide organization, but people have some preconceived notion when they think about, habitat homes or affordable housing coming into their community. But if you can let them know like what truly that impact can mean on their taxes and all of the things that are part of that community, that needs to happen, and understand that there truly might be NIMBYism. I have one more thing, Kurt, that I want to share. As far as the More Housing Wisconsin work that you're doing on zoning, I think that's phenomenal. Habitat for Humanity is actually hosting a housing week at the end of April, first part of May, in partnership with the city of La Crosse. They have hired a third-party consultant to take a look at the zoning to see if there's things that they can do to make it more accessible to develop housing in our community. And so we're doing a week long of multiple different events and trainings and interactive things, specifically around educating our community on zoning and why it's important and why thinking about changing how we look at zoning will benefit. So I'm just wondering if it would be possible if I could share. We launched our website actually yesterday, and it lists some of the work that we're doing as far as that Housing Week partnership and zoning. That if folks want to kind of take a look at some of the work that we've been doing, awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Kaya and Josh. I just find this fascinating. I think this model can work in other communities. Obviously, there's a lot of interest even in the group that's here today. And Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to pass on some of the questions to Josh and Kaya. Thanks.
Sure. So we have a few questions in the Q&A. One is, do all the homes you are building, are they modular homes on basements?
Yes. Yes, they're all factory built. So they're coming pre-built out of the factory. They will all be put on full basements. The porches and the garages will be constructed after the homes have been set. So those are separate, but they are an intentional part of the project. They have to be included on all the homes.
So the follow-up question to that is, who is the home producer?
So we are working with a factory. They're out of Redwood Falls, Minnesota. They're called Schultz Homes. They are a Clayton factory. And so Clayton is they are the largest factory-built housing manufacturer in the United States. And they are one of the first factories that has put these amazing cross-mod units out there. They've been building hundreds and hundreds of them across the United States, and they've been very, very effective solutions to affordable housing needs.
I have another question from Ed. Does Habitat focus solely on single-family homes, or are you open to multi-family development?
I love that question. Yes, we want density just as much as anybody else, which is why we are having the discussions that we're having about zoning. We have built twin homes, but most of the municipalities, you can't get past that with some of the density rules that are out there as far as zoning is concerned. We are strictly a home ownership nonprofit, so we don't go past the idea of like shared, wall construction, zero lot line as far as home ownership. So we definitely are looking at density, but we wouldn't get into anything like the construction of, an apartment complex with, 16 units, because that's just not our mission. But I do know some habitats too in larger municipalities are looking at things like more condo type developments where there are multiple units in a building. 100% we will.
I have a few more questions from chat here. How long have you been using CrossMod, and what are the owners saying about them?
Yep. So Habitat for Humanity in La Crosse, we are actually a licensed dealer for the state of Wisconsin, which means we purchase homes directly from the factory. We don't purchase through a dealer. So that eliminates the middleman and is why we can offer such a great price point on these homes. We've actually been using factory-built housing development as an opportunity for us, just Habitat, to develop more affordable housing for the last quite a few years. So since 2022. So we have actually put factory-built homes in as part of our construction kind of toolkit. In all honesty, we have gone back less on warranty repairs on our factory-built homes than we have on our stick-built homes. We build our homes with volunteers, so things happen. But we definitely had some pushback when we first started doing this, specifically in the city of La Crosse, saying this is going to be substandard housing. Why is Habitat doing this? And every single one of them has apologized for some of their early comments because in all honesty, you can't tell the difference. So I could invite you to La Crosse and say, let's go through 10 houses and you tell me which ones are the factory built homes. You honestly would not be able to know. Um, and then I think the other thing is they're just such high quality. You know, the materials that are being used and all of that kind of stuff. It is not what a lot of people have in their head, what factory built homes are. So we have been so pleased with the quality, the price point, the quickness that we can get housing out to people in our community, that we are definitely on board with continuing to use this as a form of affordable housing development.
Great. Y'all keep the questions coming. I see a few more. One in the Q&A is from Tim is, does the home have a frame under the house?
Yes. So because these are cross mods, and I always say, see, think about it as like a cross between a manufactured and a modular home, which one is built to a HUD code, federal HUD code, you know, manufactured home is built to a federal HUD code, modular home is built to local code. So the chassis is actually still underneath the home, but because of the type of construction of this home, it cannot be on anything other. So the wall systems are built that it cannot be on anything other than a permanent foundation. So it has to go on a crawl space or a basement. And so you still got that chassis underneath there, but for all intents and purposes, the construction standards are much more in line with a modular home. But because of some of the other construction things, it does come with that chassis. And you can remove that. We're not going to do that. We're actually just pouring larger basements to allow for that headspace, and then we'll cover up the chassis.
Cool. I have a question from Danny. How can you get a $250,000 to $300,000 house down to a payment that's under 30% of income?
Yep. Ask all us affordable housing developers, how do we do that? Because that is what we've been doing for years now. You know, we've been building homes that are starter homes that are appraising. You know, we just built a 1,400 square foot home in the city of La Crosse. It was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It didn't even have a garage, and it appraised for almost $370,000. You know, so you just can't get around that anymore. What you have to do is you have to bring in subsidy. So we partner with Cooley Cap. Cooley Cap has homes, CDBG, HP, HCRI, Hickory funding, that can come in. We are also applying for CHOTO funding through the state of Wisconsin. You know, the city of Hillsborough is providing some TIF funding, and then Habitat for Humanity as a licensed lender through the state of Wisconsin can also bring in second loans to buy down that first mortgage. So what we've seen is, you know, subsidy amounts that, you know, maybe $25,000 to $40,000 was enough to get a low income family into a house. We're bringing in $150,000 sometimes in subsidy in order to make these homes affordable to families. So you want to be cognizant and be building homes that are adding to the tax base, to the economic development of a city, but even just basic homes nowadays, the appraisals that are coming out, we have to bring in subsidy. And so we've gotten good at it. You know, we have, you know, and the really great thing about Habitat is that we are the lender. So we can put soft seconds on these homes to bring that price down to an affordability piece. But we layer a lot of different funding. And as nonprofits, that's kind of how all of our developments have gone since the beginning of time.
I see one more question in chat here from Bonnie. Do you get involved with demolishing homes that are condemned and then build on that property?
Yes. So as an affordable housing developer, we are subject to the availability of the market, and it is just as hard for us sometimes to find properties as it is for everybody else, especially at that you know, lower income price point. So you know, we get vacant lots, we buy distressed properties and demo. We have purchased houses and done rehabs, and so done work on them and then sold them to Habitat homeowners. And so manufactured and factory built housing is just another kind of tool that we've added to all of that so that we can be responsive and find houses for a greater need. So, you know, I'm the same thing. I have a real estate agent. They send me houses. I go out, and a lot of times by the time I'm even there, you know, they're sold. You know, so I have to be on top of it. And we also have to look at all of those different options for development, which purchase and demo has been definitely something that we've done.
Hey, Zach, and Andrea, I had a couple questions I wanted to throw at Josh just to give Kaya
Yes.
some breathing moments. And Josh,
Go for it. We got plenty of time, Kurt.
okay, great, thanks. So and Josh, I was really interested in this. So could you? I assume maybe you could just confirm for us that the city, when it set up this subdivision originally, it provided all the utilities and improvements. So we're talking about fully improved lots here, and these
Yes.
houses just have to hook up to the sewer and the water. And yes.
Correct. Yep. So, great question, Kurt. Yeah. So when this project was initially started, again back in the 90s, the city was the developer. So they handled everything with the road, handled everything with the utilities. Everything is currently stubbed, so it's pretty much plug and play for these houses. All they have to do is go through the permitting process, and they can move forward as they need to. So, they're obviously with that. It was um, a large amount of funds that was invested into this project years ago, which is kind of where some of the commentary of why are we doing it like we're doing it? Trying to get these lots filled. And truth be told, it's if not now, when, right? Yeah, we can have a house built every 3 years or so. But if you have an opportunity to fill those vacant lots and have the opportunity to use some of that funding for other future projects, it's kind of being a little bit strategic with some of the long-term planning for the community.
Mhm. How many lots was the original subdivision? How many lots did you have left?
That
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We currently have 14 technically left, but of course, Habitat is looking at eight of them in the initial Tinker's Bluff subdivision. So there are a handful of lots that are still available for purchase because we did want to be cognizant that there are people that may want to still build. So we did want to make sure that there were uh, some lots still available for construction. In the initial project, it was done in two phases. So the first phase, there was approximately, I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but I want to say about 24 to 28
Mhm.
initial lots. And then over the years, there was an additional purchase on a farm that ended up becoming the second edition of the subdivision. So it's been again, it's been an ongoing conversation for many years, and it just kind of took us to this point to be able to say, okay, where exactly are we going with this project? Because again, if not now, when? What are we going to do with it? Are we going to just let it sit? We kind of went back and forth. Do we try and get a realtor to kind of help with marketing a little bit more? And it's something where, well, we're the developer. Why not try to find a developer to actually construct it? So.
Yeah. And then Josh, my final question is, what Kai, Kai was talking about kind of subsidizing to lower the price point a little bit. Did I assume the city did some things to make these lots more affordable to Habitat for Humanity? And I think maybe you mentioned a couple, but what were some of those I thought I remember from reading the article that you maybe waived the sewer and water utility connection fee, and what were some other
Yep.
things? Yeah.
Yeah. No, great question. So, yeah, to try to make it a little bit more equitable for this project, because again, I mean, there's a big investment from Habitat. Overall, the actual cost on the city, I don't have the exact number, but it's around that $18,000 mark. There is a upfront incentive. As soon as they break ground, they will get some funding to just get the project going, and then upon completion, there is another incentive provided around between those two numbers. I want to say it was around $10,000. And then yeah, we offered the water sewer hookup fee. We waived that, which is a little around $1,100. And then there were a few smaller items in there, just trying to provide a little bit more assistance. And you can be very obviously very creative with different funding packages. And again, we're very fortunate because of the fact that we had that affordable housing extension. So we had about $280,000 that we're able to play with, and we're able to apply a portion of those funds to this project. So there really isn't much of an impact for the TID that they're going to be going up in, or any other taxpayer money, because it's previous funds from the TID, the Affordable Housing Extension. So, But yeah, we were pretty creative with the different funding packages, and Kaya and I had probably a few conversations about that over the months to try to figure out what it is that they need. Because yeah, I mean, she's right. I mean, we can say, here's 5 grand, but does that really solve it?
Mm,
Maybe not necessarily. And I'm sure in any case they would probably love more money because who wouldn't, right?
right.
But there's also that what is the feasibility factor behind it when you're looking at the ROI? Because one of the things that we're having to look at is what is that return on investment in this case. So because again, it's in a TID with that new construction, there won't be any actual income for that for 3 fiscal years, right? So there will be a little bit of time before we see any of that significant impact. And then in turn, we want to look to see how long the life of the TID. So you want to kind of make sure that like a performa, it levels out appropriately. So, but it takes a little bit of creativity, it takes a little bit of discussion, and at the end of the day, really, and I think Kyle will agree, it's about the relationship of it too, being able to have that conversation and see what you can do to make it work.
And
Thanks.
every piece counts, so all of the things that Josh has talked about, taken individually doesn't make for much, but each one of those things is very important. Not paying for the lots is important. Small incentives through the TIF is very important. Waiving of fees is massively important. And when you're a nonprofit developer, that your margins are narrow, the costs have increased, like all of those like outside the box ways of thinking about approaching this type of development is so important. And so, and this was something that took a lot of time and a lot of different layering of funding. We received a loan from Habitat International, so we have a construction loan to do this project. So, there's a lot of different things that are coming together for this, but the more that you can work with a municipality and the more that they can bring something to the table, makes it easier for Habitat to partner with that municipality. So we have other municipalities that want affordable housing, but some of them, because of the needs and the lack of infrastructure, they don't pencil out. I can't make them work.
I do have a couple more questions here. Uh, One is from Tim. He's asking, is the land included and purchased by the buyer or included for free?
As far as so we got the land for free from Hillsborough.
Okay.
But the houses that we will be selling will be selling the market rate obviously will just be sold on the market. We do have the opportunity with our partnership with Cooley Cap for some of these homes to go into the Cooley Community Land Trust. That's a whole nother story, but that would be where we only transfer the improvements to the homeowner and not the land and get that permanent affordability piece to it. But hopefully
Cool.
that answers your question.
I see a question from Bonnie in the chat. How does a community get you into their community? What does that roadmap look like? She says they're in southeast Wisconsin.
Be like Josh, be willing to work with you. So one of the things that we did not anticipate, I think Josh and I talk about this all the time, like we did not realize that this project would kind of create kind of the waves that it has. We were just trying to do what we wanted to do. Habitat wanted to build houses for affordability because we know the needs in the community. Josh knew from his board that this was something that they needed to do with this development. And so we sat down and we figured this out. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, how did you crack this egg? And we're like, so
Yeah.
we didn't anticipate this. So the both of us are getting a lot of feedback and municipalities reaching out to us saying like, how do we do this? And so Habitat La Crosse is working with some state organizations on some potential low interest funding so that we can take this process, this plan, this outline to other municipalities. And so we're hoping to have some answers, maybe later this summer, that would allow us the opportunity to do this in other municipalities. But I think also, City of Hillsborough was able to do that without, any of this. We were able to sit down. So think about your local affordable developers, your for-profit developers, and start having those conversations. And like Josh said, just do it. And if you can remove as many barriers as possible. So I've had municipalities that say, yeah, we're selling land for $5,000 and I just don't understand why nobody's buying it. Like you can make your land for free, and it's still, you have to find other ways to make housing development work. And so, start having those conversations. Josh and I think, are both more than happy to chat with you about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one thing I'll kind of just include on that is, again, I mean, it is really relationship building. It's having those connections and just asking the question of what can we do? It's amazing what you're able to accomplish just by asking the question and getting engaged with whether it's local developers, local contractors, because who knows? I mean, there could be someone right down the street that would say, yeah, you know what? I'd be willing to do two or three houses, or I'd be willing to do a whole subdivision. But also, once momentum is started, it makes it a lot easier. It's a lot easier to continue that momentum and to do a shameless little plug here. Following this project, we were actually able to strike up a deal with a developer and an operator, and then the city, and then a partnership with the state. So, I mean, a lot of entities involved to have a construction of a brand new state-of-the-art child care facility and a senior center, right? So, I mean, and part of that is they see the momentum. Everybody sees the momentum. And so sometimes you just need a little bit of a kickstart, a little bit of a catalyst. And I'm a firm believer in it's the communication, it's the connection, it's what kind of relationship are you willing to build? What are you willing to do to uh, just have that initial conversation?
That is all the questions I see for now.
Well, that's
Zach,
wonderful. Kurt, do you have any parting words before we thank our panelists? Anything more, Kurt?
I just wanted to thank our panelists, Kaya and Josh. Thanks for taking the time to share this project with us. And this is the type of exciting examples that I think communities around the state need to hear about, and you'll learn more about in More Housing Wisconsin. So thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks everyone again for joining us today. Many of these resources, as Andrea dropped in the chat, can be found on our website. You can save the chat simply by clicking the three dots next to the emoji icon in the chat. Go ahead and download the chat. We've got a couple of other links to upcoming programs that the league's got going on. Really thank Kurt for staying involved in his labor of love over the last year of diving into a ton of different topics on the More Housing Wisconsin series. So we encourage you to take a look at that. There's a nugget in there, literally something for everyone. So take a look at that. Thanks for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you all at the next More Housing Wisconsin presentations or the Food for Thought series that the league puts on. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care. Thanks.